Hello and welcome to the Pathways Teach First Careers Team CV workshop. We have put together a new workshop for people to look at to help them write a strong and professional CV, and it's going to be delivered by myself, Rachel Taylor, who is a senior officer within the Pathways team. The Pathways Career Services team provide assistance to ambassadors and second year participants with CV, application form, cover letter and interview experience, and also with career coaching, summer projects, which are the mini internships run yearly, and also with resources and signposting to relevant CPD for you. So today we're going to go through a few things around your CV. Firstly, about how to choose the right format for your experience, how to write a personal statement, how to revision your experience, especially when transferring from potentially teaching to a non-teaching role, identifying your transferable skills and thinking about how to explain those, how to articulate them through your CV, and also some do's and don'ts and common pitfalls and mistakes with CVs. So firstly, there are two different formats for the CV. There is a chronological CV or a skills-based CV. Chronological focus is the most common. It presents the candidate's experience in an order of most recent first and runs through the kind of key skills, experience and successes within those positions. It runs through experience, education, any volunteer work, interests and additional skills they may want to highlight, whereas skills-based CVs really highlights transferable skills to employers. It can be used for people that may be having a career change, people that would be returning to the workplace after time away, and it's also good when people are looking to de-emphasize employment gaps and emphasize specific skills that are very relevant for that particular role. So personal statements, which you may have heard as referred to as profiles on your CV, it focuses on your unique value proposition. So it will draw the reader's attention to your most important qualities, skills, achievements, and abilities. And some key points that we wanted to highlight with a profile. Firstly, where it's placed, it will be placed at the top of your CV, so just below your name and contact details. It should be around 2 to 3 sentences, very dynamic, so covering all of those key skills. And we recommend really thinking before to pull out the skills that are most desirable that you may hold, rather than using more kind of core expected skills. So we recommend putting it in a format of 3 sentences. Firstly, a sentence of who you are. Secondly, a sentence of your skill set. And thirdly, a sentence of what your next steps are. So you can tailor this to the role as well. If you're applying for a position that may be different than your current role, then you can then adapt that to that particular sector or to that particular post. And what we would like to do now is recommend people to take a few minutes to think about their personal statement. What we'd like you to do is pull out 5 key words when you're writing down your experience or thinking through your experience and skills. And then afterwards, kind of reading through what these keywords are and then reading through your current statement and starting to think if they're matching and if the skills that you've pulled out in that exercise then are the same as the ones you've currently highlighted, but also bearing in mind that 3-sentence rule that we encourage. It really helps keep it very clear and very concise for the reader, while also putting a very clear context of you and what the type of position is you're looking for, how you match to them. So we're just gonna give you a few minutes. I recommend pausing the webinar for the next 3 to 4 minutes, just so you can have a think through your experience and skills. And as I mentioned, really kind of pulling out keywords, pulling out key experience that you think that you've used to then transfer to your current statement. So now what we're going to do is write your new personal statement following that exercise. And thinking again around that 3-sentence structure, thinking about using words and key phrases that really sell you and how relevant you are to that particular post. Something we hear very often in the recruitment is how often people apply for roles, but they don't tailor the application to that position or to that particular organisation. And that attention to detail and that shown of commitment of why you're looking for that and why you're looking for that organisation is very key. So getting it in right at the start of the CV is even better. So I recommend, again, pausing the webinar just for around 5 minutes or so, just so you can start to write that new statement and shape it. So hopefully everybody found that a very useful exercise and you've started to think about what those personal statements can now look like. So we have put a few examples on here of ones that we have supported people with in the past and ones that stand out to us as a really kind of clear personal statement of who that individual is and gives a picture already of what they're looking for, what they can bring to the table, what value they can add to their next employer. So now what to include in your CV and what to not include in your CV. So firstly, including contact details. I often suggest people don't include a full address. It can take up quite a lot of space on the page, and you really want to use that space to talk about your skills and experience. So just your name, your contact number and your email address is sufficient. As we've just discussed, a personal statement, a profile paragraph, so that would be below the contact details. Your education and qualifications below that, or your work experience, it may be you have those two the other way round. Your voluntary experience, if you have any, again, it really shows a level of commitment to that organisation and can start to paint a picture for that employer of who you are as well. And then finally, if you wanted to pull out some very relevant skills, so if you use a particular database, if you have very high Excel skills, again, thinking about a job that you're applying for and then tailoring those skills to that particular role. Things to exclude from your CV is anything that can be discriminatory information. So that would include age, sex, nationality, marital status, and family responsibilities. As I mentioned previously, your full address, postcode is sufficient if you would like to add that in. Interests, unless they directly relate to the role or the organisation, or, as I mentioned with volunteering, can add an extra dynamic to you, to that employer, then I don't suggest having them in there. Lots of people tend to put very generic interests of kind of socialising with friends or visiting the cinema and dining out, whereas if they're not adding anything to your application, then there's no use to you adding them in. And finally, references. So not relevant at this stage. Again, they often take up quite a lot of room and they will be requested if you're offered the role or through an application form process if they're needed at the beginning of an application. So a few things to think about in regards to format. Firstly, being consistent, both with the way that you lay out your previous experience or your education. Also with the font, we often see CVs where they have fonts that change halfway through, or also there can be times where lots of words are put into italic or lots of words are put into bold. It actually makes it far more difficult for the reader to scan through and to pull out the information they want to when it's formatted like this. And when you're thinking that a potential employer could have a very high number of CVs and could look at each CV for around kind of 30 seconds, it's really important to make sure it's very, very clear and they can see the information as easily as possible. So mentioning Teach First is a really key one. I see a high number of CVs where people haven't mentioned Teach First or they haven't mentioned they've gone through the leadership development program. And and something to pull out with that as well is not to refer to it as the LDP, but also to ensure that you're putting into context, you're explaining what the leadership development program is, what Teach First is. It may be a potential employer has heard of them, it may be they haven't. So if you're putting your CV through and they haven't heard, you're already putting yourself on that back foot of them not understanding exactly what that brings to the table. Making it readable, so keeping it under 2 pages, using bullet points as well, and then utilizing white space. So if it's just over 1 page, thinking about what you've put in there and have you put references, will that reduce it down to 1 page? Just making sure there's not a lot of white space, a lot of blanks across it. On the right-hand side on this page, we've just put some examples of wrong and rights. Again, just to touch on the Teach First Leadership Development Programme that's listed there, we find a lot of people put Teach First as their employer, which is not correct. Your employer will be the school, and then you can also put in a note either in brackets or underneath where you can put it into a little bit more detailed context of what Teach First is. So what I'd like you to do now is to take a little bit of time and just think about your current role, thinking about what your key responsibilities are, what regular tasks you undertake, what additional things you may have done, and then just make a note of it or think it through in your mind so it's fresh for the next slide. And I'd recommend pausing the webinar just for around kind of 3 minutes or so, just so you can think about that. So, did you remember to list all of your core responsibilities, all of your key achievements, mentoring or coaching relationships you may have, how you collaborate with other members or other teams? Did you mention your current projects and interventions that you've implemented? Did you mention how you present at meetings to stakeholders, how you manage others? Do you analyze data, and did you think about that and manage budgets and plan events? And did you meet targets, and did you meet KPIs in your position? So all of these kind of bits of information are very, very relevant for your CV, for your profile, to bear in mind for that, and then also later on down the line at that application and interview stage as well. So it may be worth, if you didn't think put that information in, then just taking a note of what information you missed, and I'm just going to give you a few seconds just to note that down if you need to. So next that we'd like to talk about is around your professional experience and how to add this onto your CV to be most effective. So firstly, I really recommend bullet pointing your experience. It makes it a lot easier for recruiters to read, and it also makes it a lot easier for you to keep it clear and have it clear in your mind as well of what your key achievements are, and sell yourself in the best way possible. So we do recommend starting each point or including in each point very strong action words. So kind of demonstrated, implemented, managed, and thinking about each statement and thinking if you detail your responsibilities, your impact, your achievements, and how we recommend laying this out. By going back to our previous slide for a moment, is around having that clarification of what your job title is, what organisation or school you're placed in, and what the dates are. And then below that, having an opening sentence, just like I said, putting into context Teach First in the leadership development program, or what your position is, what the school, what the organisation is like. Again, mentioning things like if you're working within a challenging school, mentioning things if you're working in a new school. So thinking about anything that may stand out or maybe slightly unique about your current position, and just including that in an opening sentence to have it clear in the reader's mind. I would then recommend below that having a key responsibilities heading and putting between 4 to 6 bullet points of your key responsibilities. Then below, having a title of key achievements and listing 2 to 4 key achievements. Key achievements are really, really important. It really allows you to demonstrate the impact that you have had, and also allows that reader to understand what additional responsibilities you might have taken on and how you've developed yourself and demonstrated that within your career. So I think another thing just to also have in your minds is thinking around the impact as well. So when you are detailing your achievements, thinking about if you can demonstrate that impact within that statement. If not, it might be something you need to demonstrate within a cover letter or a full application form, because I understand it may be lengthy. But if there's any kind of short data or short facts that you can add in, then it really, really strengthens your CV. So an example might be that you ran a new project within the class. This resulted in X% of the class attending, up from the previous 6 months of Y%. Alternatively, by including a new area to the curriculum and developing that, it increased the grade from X% to Y% across your year. So thinking in those sorts of terms as well, and I recommend thinking about that through the whole interview process, the whole application process, because that's really what an employer is looking for, is to understand what success you had from your actions and also what impact you made, what outcomes occurred from your actions. So thinking about applying for positions that may be away from your current role or may just be maybe similar or the next step or a new organisation, a new challenge in that sense, I would really think around what about the job post appealed to you. So why are you applying for that role? Thinking about your skills and experience in line with it, and then making sure that is pulled into your CV as well. Again, mentioned it before, but in terms of that, the relevance for the post and tailoring your CV to each position you apply for is extremely important. So thinking about transferable skills, I would think about your entire Teach First experience, how you can apply this to the applications, thinking about where you were before joining the LDP, and then in your years in teaching, where you've got to, kind of what did you learn, what did you achieve, are you doing things now that you didn't do previously, and thinking of particular examples. And we have a few listed there, but we're just going to go on to a page that has more detailed examples set out for you. So this is a table that we've put together recently. It runs through what your teaching experience may be, and then how to transfer that into a teaching or a non-teaching skill as well. It can sometimes be hard to take a step back from your teaching role and think what that actually means if you're taking a step to a different type of position or a different type of organisation or school. So just to run through those examples there, we have delivering a lesson, which is planning and organising skills. Having new tasks given to be delivered in a set time is managing multiple priorities to conflicting deadlines. Working with parents, colleagues, managers and governors, so managing stakeholder relationships with diverse groups. Tracking pupil data, monitoring and evaluation, analysing pupil data, research and analytical skills, organising a school trip, event organisation, lesson observations, ability to work under pressure, planning new lessons, being creative, being innovative, facilitating learning and development, project management, supporting newly qualified teachers, staff development, delivering lessons, presenting, changing lessons plans with short notice, being adaptable, being flexible, working in a challenging school, demonstrating resilience, convincing a pupil to engage with the task, influencing, and working with a colleague on a task, being collaborative. So a few just to pull out there, I think that often really stand out and people can have very, very strong examples for, is around being creative and innovative, with managing stakeholder relationships, around being adaptable and being flexible within the workplace. So from our corporate partners, they fed into us a little while back about the top 10 skills that they look for when they're recruiting. And we really wanted to pass this on to you and thought it may be of use. So first is the ability to work under pressure. Second, that adaptable and flexible skill. Third, being analytical. Fourth, being collaborative. Fifth, combining big picture thinking and fine detail, which is a really fantastic combination for someone to demonstrate. 6, commercial awareness. So thinking if you are applying for a position that may be in a very different sector than now, thinking about doing research on that sector beforehand, researching news stories that may be around, researching that particular organization, showing that you have an understanding of that industry. 7, communication. 8, being creative, being innovative. 9, leadership skills. And number 10, organization and prioritization. So we finally wanted to list a few kind of do's and don'ts. So firstly, the don'ts and common mistakes that we see quite a lot within the careers team is not tailoring the CVs to the position, not tailoring your applications to the position you're applying for, not mentioning the Teach First Leadership Development Programme, not proofreading your CV, which is a really, really important one. I've had instances in the past that someone's put an excellent application in, a really fantastic cover letter, and they haven't been considered for interview because they made spelling mistakes. And it really seems to show that lack of attention to detail to that potential employer. So not using relevant examples, not demonstrating your role and responsibilities, your impact and your achievements, not having your CV in reverse chronological order, having an inconsistent format, having too much text, and using the wrong tense. So to summarize, we recommend spending some time having a very strong personal profile statement, tailoring your CV to the role and using that consistent format, thinking about that job title and then bullet sentence and then bullet points for your key responsibilities and for your key achievements to demonstrate your experience and achievements, knowing your transferable skills, also really useful for when you're going to that interview stage and you're wanting to practice examples, showing your impact and proofreading your CV. So we hope that you enjoyed today's webinar. Please do not hesitate to contact the Ambassador inbox if there are any questions following it. And we wish you good luck with your applications. Thank you.